Stepney had been repaired and was back to work. Sir Topham Hatt had asked him to shunt cars in the yard until his trial was over. "I really can't make any more mistakes," he said to himself as he moved the cars into place. A few days ago, Stepney had let his nervousness get the better of him and had crashed into an old shed where Elizabeth, the vintage steam truck, was being restored. The summer holidays had arrived on Sodor, and the railway was busier than ever. Elizabeth's restoration was complete, and she was helping out with odd jobs around the island. Today, she was bringing a delivery of fuel tanks to Dryaw Airfield. However, up ahead, Trevor the traction engine was blocking the road. "Hurry up, Trevor," she said. "I'm going to be late." "I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but I can't," Trevor called back. "This cart is very old. I have to go slowly and carefully." So Elizabeth fumed behind him all the way down the road. As they reached the crossing, Elizabeth swerved around Trevor, causing him to bump into the old cart. Its wheels finally gave out and it collapsed onto the tracks. Elizabeth rolled her eyes as she drove past. Then Trevor heard a whistle. "Oh no!" Trevor cried. Meanwhile, Stepney was working in the yards. He had just finished shunting a train for Donald and Douglas and was just about to shunt another for Henry when a workman came up to him. "Stepney, we need your help right away. Donald and Douglas have had an accident." "Yes, sir," Stepney replied, and without hesitation he collected the breakdown train. When Stepney arrived at the scene of the disaster, he could see that Donald and Douglas had run into Trevor's cart. He could hear the twins arguing. "Didn't, did, did not, did to." While the twins bickered, Stepney looked at Trevor. The traction engine was most upset. "Are you all right, Trevor?" he asked kindly. "I'm fine, but Elizabeth sure did give me a fright. That's why my cart broke on the crossing." And Trevor explained what had happened. "Oh, that Elizabeth," Stepney replied with a frown. "She is so impatient." "How did you two meet?" Trevor asked. Stepney blushed with embarrassment and told Trevor all about his accident. "I don't think I can ever make up for my mistake." "I wouldn't worry," Trevor said kindly. "You're a really useful engine." Stepney was very grateful for Trevor's advice. As Elizabeth pulled into Dryaw Station, she was quite late indeed. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting for her. "Elizabeth," he boomed, "where have you been? The new hot air balloon needed those gas tanks, but now it's too late. They've already left." Elizabeth snorted. "Ask Trevor," she said indignantly. "He was going much too slowly and taking up far too much space on the road." "I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I'll speak to Jem Cole at once about being more aware of other vehicles around you." Elizabeth smiled in satisfaction. Just then, the telephone rang in the station. "Excuse me a moment," he said as he walked inside. Moments later, he emerged, looking rather concerned. "The truck in charge of delivering my new foghorn has a flat tire," he sighed. "It's very important. Can you please go and fetch it for me from the docks?" "Of course, sir," Elizabeth chuffed pompously. She liked feeling important. She trundled quickly out of the station and onto the open road. Meanwhile, Stepney was puffing back towards the yards with the breakdown train. He was trying to think of how to prove himself to Sir Topham Hatt. Suddenly, he felt an odd jolt beneath his wheels. "What was that?" Stepney cried. The loud sound had frightened him, and he was about to speed up when he remembered what Edward and Trevor had told him. "You must be careful. I can't disappoint Sir Topham Hatt again." So instead of going faster, Stepney slowed down. He was glad that he did. As he rounded the bend, he saw no one other than Elizabeth, sitting lopsided on the rails and looking most annoyed. "Wait until Topham hears about this," she fumed. "I wasn't warned about any hazards on the road. Oh, my poor aching wheels." "What's happened here?" came a voice. Just then, Cyril the fogman walked up to them, carrying a box of fog detonators. "Ah, just as I suspected, you know," he said to Elizabeth.
You would have known about the rocks if you'd been more patient and waited for me.
Elizabeth was speechless. Then Cyril turned to Stepney.
You should be grateful for this engineer, he said to Elizabeth. If he had needed my warning, you would have been in serious trouble.
Your warning? Stepney asked curiously.
Yes, replied Cyril. My fog detonator, of course. Another engine might have ignored it since there isn't any fog, but you didn't. You're a very wise and useful engine, Stepney.
Can someone please help me? Elizabeth called out suddenly. Before long, everything was put right. Thank you for rescuing me, Stepney, Elizabeth mumbled as she drove away. Stepney smiled. He finally felt like a really useful engine again. However, he was still feeling uncertain about his chances of changing Sir Topham Hatt's mind. As Stepney arrived back at the sheds that night, he saw the engines talking around the turntable. Oh well, he sighed wistfully.
Stepney, please, wait a moment. I need to speak with you.
Stepney was most surprised. Sir Topham Hatt continued.
As you know, your trial ends tomorrow, and that means I have to make my decision on whether or not to send you home.
Yes, sir, said Stepney sadly. It was lovely to visit. I'm sorry I couldn't prove myself worthy of being a part of your railway.
Quite the opposite, actually, replied Sir Topham Hatt with a smile. I've heard all about what you did today. Not only did you show that you can be careful and attentive, but you also prevented my precious Elizabeth from being damaged. Another engine might have misunderstood Cyril's warning, but you didn't. And for that, I think you've more than made up for your previous mistake.
Stepney's eyes widened. Sir, does this mean?
I've spoken with your controller, and he agrees that if you would like to, you may join my railway.
Oh, sir! Cried Stepney. He was at a loss for words. The rest of Sir Topham Hatt's words were drowned out by the sounds of whistles and hoots from the engines. Welcome to Sodor, Stepney! peeped Thomas excitedly.
I never doubted you,
chimed in Edward with a knowing smile. Stepney just beamed from buffer to buffer. Stepney is now in charge of the loop line. He sometimes misses his old railway, but he loves Sodor very much. The Bluebell engine is proud to call himself a member of Sir Topham Hatt's railway.